Well. There's been a new FAQ update for Arkham Horror, and it's a doozy. It's not just taboo changes. I'll talk about those, but we're going to spend most of this video, and in fact, most of the next week of uploads, talking about the upcoming plans for a current format in Arkham Horror. So we're going to start with that, scroll straight to the bottom, to the current Legacy and Limited Environments beta. It says, when deck building, a group may build their decks in the player card pool using one of 3 different environments: current, limited, and legacy. Skipping ahead to legacy environment, that's what we've been playing for the entire life of Arkham, no restrictions at all. The current environment says the following: players who wish to play in the current environment may only deck build with core cards in the most recent Investigator expansions as follows: the Arkham Horror the Card Game Core Set 2016 or 2021, the 5 starter decks, Nat, Harvey, Witty, Jacqueline, and Stella, and the 3 most recently released Investigator expansions, which would currently be the Scarlet Keys, Hemlock, and Drowned City. And you might have some questions involving Parallels, promos, and story assets that are answered down here, sort of. The existence of Parallels, promo, and story assets earned within certain scenarios may prompt additional questions regarding whether or not they may be used in a given environment. These cards exist outside of a defined environment and structure and may be utilized at the group's discretion. Which is kind of a non-answer. It's basically a big shrug. You figure it out. My answer to this, what I'll be talking about going forward in literally every video as though it's the de facto answer, even though it's not, is if you're playing a campaign, you're allowed to take story cards from that campaign. With regards to promos, parallel investigators, advanced signatures, all of that sort of stuff, all of it's banned. As far as I'm concerned, most of that stuff came out before Scarlet Keys did anyway. Keeping track of which did and which didn't is a massive hassle. Parallels are frequently designed for very specific, intricate combos that only exist in Legacy anyway. So even though this doesn't say that parallels are banned, I think what most people will do in current environment is say that parallels are banned, advanced signatures are banned, you can take any story assets from the campaign. I think that's by far the most reasonable way to run it, and I'm kind of shocked it doesn't say that. But let's talk more about what current environment actually says. I guess before I do, there's also the limited environment. I'm not going to read this one out loud. It's essentially the same as current, except inside of the most recent 3 investigation expansions, you can just pick any 3 investigator expansions. I find that to be a less interesting environment. I couldn't really tell you why. I guess just because there's so many different variants of it, there's not going to be one homogenous optimization discussion around it. Current environment being the same across everyone who's playing it, that makes it much more interesting to me. And I do want to talk about the current proposal, the beta for current. A while back, I made a video saying that current was basically necessary. Every game will eventually need card rotation. It's inevitable. It is good for the long-term health of the game. You shouldn't dread it. You should embrace it with open arms when it gets here. It is necessary. And we shouldn't assume the developers will implement a version that sucks. And in that video, I was saying that people are being unnecessarily doom and gloom and assuming that the current format would exist in a way that really didn't make any sense and wouldn't be fun to play. And the exact example I gave is pretty much exactly this proposal. Because the issue is that it's very self-evident looking at the most recent expansions, they were printed for an eternal format. If you take a look at characters in some of the most recent expansions like Amina Zidane and Michael McGlynn, the Doom archetype and most of the guns in the game just got banned. These characters feel incomplete or at the very least totally one note. If you take a look at this proposed current format, the Rogue card pool is absolutely atrocious. Because these expansions were printed for a legacy format, they were not printed to be self-contained and functional on their own, so this sort of feels bad. However, this is still a beta. The idea here might be more to gauge how full does the card pool feel, do people have interest in this sort of thing. I'm really hoping that if they remove this beta tag in the future, it will be alongside either a radical change in product system organization where they're actually making fully self-contained expansions, or like a straight up rebox, like a core set part 2. Currently, as we'll discuss in the upcoming series over the next week, I think the core set isn't really very functional. I'll be making a video for every class and then a tier list of my Theorycraft for how the core set feels making decks for every character. And the long story short is that while the idea of rotation is good, and for most characters, core set feels pretty good, for a lot of characters, core set feels genuinely awful. I think Alessandra might be the best example of that, because you're playing an Alessandra without fine clothes and basically with no access to any stat pumps of any kind. Alessandra feels like a completely unfinished character that you just don't have any fun either playing or building a deck for. At least that's my first impressions having built decks for all the characters now. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think the beta is very much a beta. I think without radical changes in future products, this format will not work. It will be a problem, and most people who are long-term fans of the game will largely continue to play in Legacy. But I do think current's a good thing for the game. I hope they end up making this format work better in the future. and I hope whatever changes are necessary to get it there do come. And in the next week, I'll have a video for every class, and I guess I'll go ahead and throw Charlie Kane into this video, since he's every class, before eventually making a tier list video and talking at length about my opinions for all the characters in the proposed current format. Obviously, it's all Theorycraft, but it's fun to talk about, and I want to talk about it. For now, though, let's go back to the FAQ and actually take a look at all the changes in the taboo list. There aren't that many. One notable thing in the FAQ section is they finally defined when you gain, spend, and forfeit actions. Before now, it's been kind of a rules gray area if you could actually just end your turn and not take actions. So if you found yourself in a situation where you had an enemy engaged you, there was nothing you could do that would actually not risk hurting you. They were penalty tokens in the back. You couldn't attack the guy without risking them. And every action left you provokes an attack of opportunity. It was actually kind of unclear if you were allowed to even pass your turn. So this just much more neatly lays out exactly when you gain, spend, and forfeit your actions, which I do appreciate. It also makes it clear that when you end your turn, you lose all remaining actions. So for specific edge case scenarios, like ending your turn with an action on Agatha, and then trying to use your ability by spending your last extra action on something like a doubled action, such as Thorough Inquiry, that's not allowed. Which is important, because Thorough Inquiry is kind of the only draw card left when we start talking about current format in a little bit. Exaggerating, but not by that much, to be honest with you. For a while, there was that really contentious email ruling saying that Quick Learner made Mythos Test basically unwinnable and that Stella was an awful character, so they backpedaled that and made it official. That's good. Wait a second, there's another clarification here. When my turn ends, can I use Agatha Crane's ability to play an event that normally specifies it can only be played during my turn? And it says you can still play an event such as Cryptic Research with the text fast, play only during your turn. But if it's still during your turn, any unused actions are forfeited when an investigator chooses to end their turn during step 2.2 of the investigation phase. All right, moving on to the next diagram. Oh, okay, step 2.2 is just the next investigator's turn begins, which is not what I thought that would be labeled as. It is actually unclear to me, because this is when an investigator chooses to end their turn. What's the phrasing on the other one? Honestly, I can't say for sure if you forfeit your actions before your turn ends. Since you can play Cryptic Research, that to me implies you can use doubled events with Agatha Crane's ability. If you can, it's a meaningful buff to her in current. Like, that's actually going to matter, because I think Thorough Inquiry and Agatha's genuinely good now. But tell me in the comments, or ask the devs. I have no idea if this works. It's actually unclear with these two rulings simultaneously existing. They've also clarified for George Barnaby with Cast Adrift, immediately updating your hand size for discard stuff. They also, and I don't mean to gloat and say I told you so too many times, but they clarified that Robert Castaigne does what he says on the card. I don't know why so many people were so hostile in the video where I talked about Robert Castaigne being crazy. They're like, you're obviously misreading the rules, you're out of your mind. No, it's what the card says. They can taboo him and make him say something else, but the card just says he works this way. I don't know why so many people were so adamant that he did something else. There's also several rulings for Transfiguration, but I haven't actually seen a use of Transfiguration that justified all the hassle so far, and I don't feel the need to read every clarification out, so let's move on to the actual taboo list. First up, getting added to Unchained are Flurry of Blows and Archibald McVeigh. Both of them cost 5 experience before, now they both cost 3. Flurry of Blows might actually be somewhat playable at 3. Archibald McVeigh, on the other hand, might not even be worth it at 1 experience. Like, the dude takes up an ally slot. He doesn't do very much. Certainly in the new current format, he's basically unplayable. I don't think dropping him from 5 to 3 fixes the fact the card just doesn't do anything. In the mutated section, Swift Reflexes is now limit twice per round. I can imagine there is some silly loop with it that makes this necessary. Chuck Fergus's first bullet point now reads that event gains fast, play only during your turn. That's basically what it already said. I'm guessing it didn't have this line of text, but I think that's assumed, and it basically changed to be reminder text, right? I thought fast that didn't specify a timing window was only during your turn already. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm pretty sure that's the case though. Regardless, this is how I think almost everyone already played it. Next up, a pretty good change for Power Word. This taboo, I think, is the exact same. If I'm misreading it, I can't remember what's different, except that this is a 2-head test instead of a 3-head test now. The issue with that, for current at least, is that Fine Clothes doesn't exist. So Alessandra was the only person who wanted this, and they still can't pass the test. But for Legacy, I think that's genuinely a good change that was a little bit unnecessarily difficult at 3-head. Like, you're already spending a ton of experience to put this in your deck. It shouldn't be a moderately difficult test if you're spending experience to add it to your deck. Hold Up was the Guardian Parlay event where if you succeeded, instead of dealing damage, you would play a card, but you still paid its cost, so like it didn't really matter. Now you also get the cost reduction for the amount you succeed by, which is a big deal. This is actually a nerf to hand-eye coordination. I was like, what's different? It no longer works on any level of tool or weapon. You can no longer use hand-eye coordination with a chainsaw or a shotgun. I don't think anyone was playing this. I'm not sure it needed this nerf, but okay. I'll trust that there was some broken deck involving this, and I haven't been super keyed into the community lately. Next up, the Blood of Thoth is getting a major buff. Now its reaction no longer exhausts, so you can get more than one resource per turn, and when you're cashing in the extra actions, it is only costing 2 offerings instead of 3. So it is tremendously better than it was, but it was unplayable grief tier trash previously. And at least in current, the best ways to add Doom to stuff just got banned. So since I've mostly been thinking about current, I'm not really concerned with this, but if you are playing Legacy and thinking about Legacy, I think this might be a playable card, at least if you're running Blood Pack, the permanent version. But for current, I can't imagine running this. And then the last piece of changes we're seeing today is Forbidden for the Necronomicon. I mean, that's just thematically appropriate, but also the card was completely busted, so yeah, makes sense. No amount of additional experience cost is going to change that the entire card is broken. So yeah, I'm very happy to see the Necronomicon banned as opposed to bending over backwards with cards like Library Pass, trying to make it not broken. Instead, we just banned the thing that is a clear design mistake. So yeah, I like that a lot. That brings us to ultimatums and boons, of which there are a couple new ones, not overly concerned, and that'll be the end of the list. But it's not quite the end of the video because, as I said, in the near future, I'm planning on talking at length about each class and current a deck list for every character. There's only, 28 of them or something? I want to post a video for every class, a deck list for every character in the class, talk about how they've changed, how the class has been affected, before ultimately doing a Theorycraft tier list on the new current format, because I really wanted to think about this, so I'm going to. I'm going to show my thoughts to all of you and hear what other people have to say about the characters in the format. But because Charlie Kane doesn't fit neatly into any of these, I'm going to go ahead and throw Charlie Kane's deck in at the end here. I say I'm going to show the Charlie deck, like there's only one, but obviously I'm just showing my current Theorycraft for what I think the best version of a character will be. There's no guarantee this will even be on the money for like what the right way to build the character is in terms of making it as strong as possible. Being in a team will change what the best possible thing you can do is, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to be showing my current best version of Charlie. But even then, Charlie is uniquely complicated. There are so many variants of Charlie. So I started by making a fighter Charlie to see what I could sort of justify doing in this version of the game. And I very quickly realized, oh yeah, there's that fighter Charlie problem where you need to play a bunch of ally assets and you need to play weapons and you need to like be able to pass your mythos test, but not use all your assets doing it so you can still fight if you have to fight that turn. And I very quickly realized I was basically just making a setup heavy fighter that had no unique advantages when I was looking at Charlie. This is probably not the best version of fighter Charlie, but I pretty quickly stopped hearing about fighter Charlie and I realized how setup heavy it would be for a fighter. At least for a fighter that didn't seem to have any unique strength to me. So moving over to Kluver Charlie, what I'm looking at for this is basically just a big old ball of stats. I don't think Charlie Kane's looking too hot in current. A lot of his most broken combos, because he obviously has access to every level 2 and under combo in the game, just don't exist. Like the thing where you shoot the dogs out of the gun, that's not here. The thing where you trick the dogs into serving you because you didn't technically play them, that's not here. A lot of the cool combos Charlie can rely on don't exist, and you basically end up making Charlies that look a lot like this, where you have good economy, some of which you can share with your team. You have good ally assets with good passive effects, good on inner effects, and you can tap them to pass all of your book tests. You're getting an extra investigate per turn. There's not a lot of movement tech left in current. Safeguard is kind of all that exists. So current's going to be much harder on tempo than you're used to, because as I've said so many times, movement is one of the worst actions. It literally does nothing. You need to do it, but it doesn't actually do anything. So having almost no movement tech in the game is going to make this much, much harder. The advantage Charlie has compared to other Kluvers is Leo DeLuca and Safeguard. But when you look at it, he's mostly just super, super durable. I haven't bothered making level 0 decks for all these people. It's just not important to me. I can largely imagine what it might look like. They're generally worse. You can pretty easily tell there's a super core card or not. In this case, there really isn't. But looking at this version of Charlie for current, to me, he feels solid. He feels like there are notably worse Kluvers in the game. There are people with way more core experience than he has. The extra action from Leo, the extra actions from Safeguard, the fact he does have Empirical Hypothesis for draw, access to Thorough Inquiry as well, those are two of the best draw cards left in the game, so that really does help him a lot. But you just end up with a very big asset pile, and this mostly gets you back to above tempo, whereas all the setup was originally pretty painful. It's not that bad, right? Magnifying classes are fast, most of these allies only need 1 copy, so you're looking at a maximum of like 6 allies, 7, 8 assets. It's not that bad, but when you remember that Thorough Inquiry is a double action, it gets a bit worse. And this is not like a super exciting Charlie deck. It really isn't. But I don't know how to make a super exciting Charlie deck. I'm of the opinion that the best thing Charlie can do is probably something like this, where it's just basically invincible pile of allies like Charlie Kane always is, and then you go blue for Safeguard because there's no other way to get movement hacks in the format, so it's just insane. And then, yeah, because you're setup heavy inherently thanks to all the allies that you need in your base ones, you're better off playing for Kluver than playing as a goon. And in terms of flexing, I mean, it's kind of hard to cut cards in this deck already for more clue finding power. We don't have that much clue finding power. There's not a lot I can do to flex. Most of these allies are just the book icon. Nothing here has a fist. So yeah, I don't really see a way to easily make Charlie flex. I don't see an incentive to put up with his setup time as a fighter. I think by far the best version of Charlie is some version of Kluver, and it's probably not that far off of this version. Anyways, that'll be all for now. Thank you for your time, and over the course of the next week, I hope you're looking forward to a lot of theory crafting videos about the upcoming current set. I guess the new current set, it's here, it happened. You can play it right now if you wanted to. And I do want to, but my friends are busy this weekend, so instead I made this video series. Anyways, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. I hope you enjoy the series.